Hey folks, it is I, your fearless English leader, and I'm coming to you live from my beautiful studio here, as you can tell. And I wanted to, as promised, post some type of a video to try to show you a bit of analysis and try to reflect on some of the topics that you guys had picked. So, one of the things that a lot of you had focused on had to do with Beowulf and the portrayal of villains within Beowulf. So I'm going to get right into it and hopefully keep this as brief as possible because I know that your attention spans are not so great. So here we go. So, first thing you'd want to do if you don't have a textbook at home is you need to find a copy of Beowulf. The version that we looked at is translated by Burton Raphael. And if you have any questions, if you're doing something else and you have any questions about doing that or locating a text version online, please let me know because I can help you out. But so the first thing you want to do, again, find the version of Beowulf that we used. So all that I did was I simply typed in Beowulf, Burton Raphael translation. And one of the ones that came up is the exact translation. Okay. And I scrolled down and I found the part I'm going to focus on, which has to do with Grendel's mom. And I went down, that was on, if you're going to use this one, it's fine. Okay. It's an EDU page. And I would actually not count this as your online source, okay, because it's an actual text version of a reading. So, anyways, this is where I found that, and this is the section that we actually read. That's exactly about Grendel's mom. It starts up here in the italics version, and it's where Hrothgar was explaining what Grendel's mother's lair looks like. Okay, so that's kind of where we're picking up here. Okay, so when you think about analyzing in the setup of the paragraph, what you're going to do is you're going to constantly ebb and flow between your ideas, what the actual text says, and then scholarly research. So I want you to kind of go back and forth. So with this type of a paper, you will have a decent bit of quotes. It doesn't mean that you're going to have, 3 pages worth of quotes, but you're going to be going back and forth. So, if you're looking here at the first part of this, you're going to see my words, what I'm talking about. Okay. And we know that I'm talking about Grendel's mom as a villain. So it says, evidence from Beowulf exhibits Grendel's mom as a more vicious villain than her son, Grendel. When explained in the text, Grendel's mom attacks Hero with vengeance. Okay. And so you start to see here me talking about, again, how Grendel's mother is portrayed as a villain. Okay. And then what I do is I start to segue into a scholarly quote. Okay. And how you're going to find a scholarly quote is by a lot of different ways, but the best and easiest for you guys it would be to look it up through Bloom's literature database or EBSCOhost. And I'll show you Bloom's first. So there are other videos that I posted that tell you how to get into Bloom's literature or to get into EBSCOhost through Mrs. Bond's library website. And if you have any questions about that, reach out to me. So once you're in to the to Bloom's, let's say, you might type in a search. For this search, I put Beowulf monsters, okay? And it yielded so many search results, okay? One of the articles I looked at was this hospitality, hostility, and peacemaking in Beowulf. And as I went through, and there's a lot of different things you can do. I would hit Control Find or Control F and try to search for either monsters or villains or evil or Grendel's mom and so forth to try to find hits on the specific page. Okay. But one of the quotes that I looked at was right here. And again, you might not find an entire article that's denoted or devoted to what you're talking about, but you might find snippets that will work with what you're saying. And that's what I look for. So this says reflecting on how to define humanity in Old English poetry, Jennifer Neville argues that monsters are characterized by the threat that they pose to human society. And I'm like, oh, that works, because does Grendel's mom pose a threat to human society? Yes, she does. And how does she do that? Well, in that italic section, it talks all about how she went after in revenge, but she went after um, Hrothgar's best friend, and then, of course, created fear and so forth. And Beowulf gets called upon again, but it shows her evil. Okay. And so that quote is one that I'm going to embed within my paragraph. So I kind of build up to this point to prove again how Grendel's mom is a villain. And I'm constantly doing that. So it says actions presented in this brief excerpt exhibit her motive for murder, lust for revenge, and ability to emit fear in those she encounters. And then I put the quote in. Okay. The quote we just talked about. So, or I just showed you, reflecting on how to define humanity in Old English poetry, Jennifer Neville argues that monsters are characterized by the threat that they pose to human society. And then I have to quote that, of course, with an internal citation, which should be a review for you all. Okay. In this particular case, there's no author. Okay. And because of that, I have to abbreviate the title. That's what you do when you cite um, a piece from an online database. And that's what we're citing right now. This is a article from an online database. Okay. So hopefully all that makes sense. But again, if it doesn't, you ask me and then I can help you, which is so delightful. The next thing I'm going to do is kind of wrap up that paragraph. So again, we're constantly ebbing and flowing with regard to what I think, what I've read, and then scholarly research. So I said, once Grendel's mom commits these atrocities, the atrocities being killing Hrothgar's best friend, okay, and therefore scaring the rest of his people, Hrothgar knows that his people are in imminent danger. As a result, he is forced to ask for Beowulf's aid again in order to subdue the threat presented. Okay, and all of this ties into, again, back to how Grendel's mom is a villain. Okay, and now I'm going to start to transition into, again, another aspect of Grendel's mom as a villain. Okay, so if you look, upon introducing Hrothgar's request for help, additional evil notions are reflected in his famous passage pertaining to Grendel's mother's lair. And again, this is a direct quote from the translated version that I already showed you earlier. Okay, and also in our textbook. So if you have your textbook, you can take a look at it there. But this is in direct reference to where Grendel's mom resides, which I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll talk about it in a second. But obviously, the place that she's living is evil. You can tell based on how it's described and the description within that on page 29. Okay. That's page 29 of this piece that I found online. All right. Hopefully, you guys are following that. All right. So, next part of that, I'm going to analyze that quote and how it relates to Grendel's mother's evil. Okay, so it says the imagery provided allows the reader to infer only the most heinous of creatures could possibly dwell in such a foul residence. So the fact that this is such a disgusting place that she lives, murky and so forth, the imagery he uses lets you know she's not like hanging out in rainbows and sunshine, okay, floating around in a hot air balloon. This place is nasty, and therefore the person that dwells there must be nasty. It says, additionally, Hrothgar alludes to Grendel's mom's lair as hellish based on his word choice, specifically when describing the mist in line 548 and the snake-like trees in line 550. Okay, dark clouds, and again, here I go. Dark clouds symbolize evil connotations, and snakes are synonymous with the devil. Okay, so hopefully, you can see how I'm analyzing and looking specifically at word choice, how long this actually takes, which is why I've been telling so many of you that you need to consolidate your topics, because if you're really analyzing, You're looking in depth at so many aspects. Word choice is critical. Okay. And so you can kind of see how I do that right there. And now I'm going to use another quote. Okay. And this time I'm going to show you how to use EBSCOhost. It's very similar and what you're going to do with that. Okay. Okay. So once you go to EBSCOhost, and again, there's an instructional video on how to access EBSCOhost. That's another one that I have on YouTube. But what I do, then make sure once you're in EBSCOhost, you click on the Literary Reference Center. And then you're going to search. And again, it might not come up the first time, but what I did was I went through and I searched Beowulf and Grendel's mother. Okay, I hit advanced search up here to do that. And within the advanced search, I also clicked on full text, just because I usually will, like, instead of yielding little brief synopsis, it's going to give you full text. And again, if you have any trouble, let me know. Okay. But this one I thought was pretty decent, and it's not that in depth. Okay. All it does is it gives a little bit of analysis on locations. And since I'm talking about Grendel's mom's lair, I thought that this Grendel's cave, which is also his mom's cave, would be appropriate. Okay. Um, so one of the things that I thought was good is it talks about how everything's unnatural. The entrance to the cave is by way of water, and the cave itself is dry. It is also lit by fire, but its fire is certainly uncanny. So it's like, again, further reiterating the fact that this is a residence for evil. Okay, and finally, when embedding that quote in, I put ellipse, dot, 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 okay, with obviously the quote, because I'm starting partway through the statement. But everything that's unnatural, which I said, the cave's entrance is water, the cave itself is dry, it's lit by fire, but everything is uncanny about it. Everything is inhumane about it. And so I said, then I conclude the paragraph. For a reader, it's effortless to compartmentalize Grendel's mom as villainous based on her actions and the writer's approach to describing her home. Okay, and that kind of gives you a little bit of a wrap up. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of other aspects you can talk about. I'm just giving you a model for what to do. And again, hopefully you can see I've got scholarly sources here, a couple of them, and I've got direct references to the text. Okay, right here. Pretty good size one. One of the things you might notice here is the fact that it is indented twice, okay, or excuse me, tabbed twice. And the reason is because that's called a block quote. And that is something that I'll talk about in another sweet time of your life. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a starting point. If you are having any type of struggles with research, let me know. I'm going to put out a couple of more of these so you guys can see. And I hope you guys are doing well.